And hello, Jet fans. This is Rich Sports Talk, and week one is officially in the books. The New York Jets falling 19-14 to the Carolina Panthers. A lot of reaction on this game. I'll get to Zack Wilson, the biggest problem in this game, and a storyline that we need to talk about for the long-term planning of this team. But let's start in the short term. To me, this was a good day for the Jets. I know it's hard. You want to win the game. You want to beat Sam Darnold. I get that. But there is a lot I like to see in this game. And the biggest thing for me, and if you've been watching or listening to me when I did this last year, my biggest criticism about the Adam Gase coaching staff was the following: was they didn't adjust at halftime. They never adjusted. They kept doing the same thing over and over again. And more importantly, if this team fell behind, you just felt like they had no fight. Like they just were moving on to the next week. They just would give up. You did not get that in this game. And to me, that was the biggest thing that I took from this game, and the biggest change of the culture for this New York Jets team is that they kept fighting. To me, they outplayed Carolina in that second half. They looked like the better team. They played better defensively, and it just felt like if they had a little bit more time, or if they started playing like that in the second quarter, they probably would have won the football game. But the first half, I know how a lot of you probably felt. It was how I felt. You were disgusted. You're like watching this saying, this is supposed to be different. I mean, the offensive line can't block. Zack Wilson's running for his life, and Christian McCaffrey's running all over the New York Jets. But I have to give this coaching staff and Robert Saleh a lot of credit, because this team came out, they fought hard in the second half, and they made adjustments. They made the big adjustments, and I have to give them a lot of credit, because last year, that was my biggest thing about the coaching staff last year. They just refused to make adjustments. They just refused. They just kept saying, hey, you know what? We're just going to keep doing this over and over again and expecting something differently. You know, psychologists say that's the definition of insanity, is trying the same thing over and over again and thinking you'll get a different result. But of course, that's the Adam Gase coaching style, and why he's currently an offensive coordinator for a high school. But let's get back on track with this game. Now, in the media, and I have a feeling that a lot of pundits will be saying this throughout the media today, is the following. Oh my God, Sam Darnold gets revenge against the Jets. Sam Darnold outplays Zack Wilson. Sam Darnold, the New York Jets made a mistake. But you have to look at the whole picture. Yes, on paper, his stats are better than Zack Wilson. But he also had a lot of time to throw, and 91 of his nearly 300 passing yards, they were checkdowns to Christian McCaffrey. And oh, by the way, Darnold fumbled a 4th and 1 in the red zone. And really, the big play of the game, outside of checking it out on McCaffrey that he made, was the big throw to Robbie Anderson. And I know that for a lot of Jet fans, that hurt in the moment, but to me, the biggest thing is that was a broken play, because you had Redwine in at safety at that point because of the injury, and they had just signed him. He's probably still learning the playbook, and he was out of position on that play. So to me, that was more the Jets having a breakdown on the back end with an inexperienced player. And I have to give this Jet team a lot of credit too. They had a lot of injuries in this game, with Machibechten and a bunch of injuries in the back end. And Braden Mann goes down, and the Jets, you left this game going, okay, Matt Amendola is the MVP, and do we really need to carry a kicker and a punter? I mean, he can do both. He was amazing. I mean, he was booting 65-yard bombs for punting. I mean, he had an incredible day, and that's one of the lighter notes. But to me, Sam Darnold, he did what you would expect. I mean, he's also going into his 4th year as a quarterback. To me, the bigger story was Zack Wilson. And Zack Wilson outplayed him in the second half. And Zack Wilson, despite having 5 drops from his receivers, getting sacked 6 times, and constantly under duress, put the Jets in a position to win that game with 2 touchdowns. He played like you thought he would play. And when you watch that second half, you're like, okay, the Jets have something here. They have a quarterback. Because when he had time to throw, he was making plays. Even when he didn't have time to throw, he was running around for his life. And yes, I know he had a bad interception in the first half. But at that point, I feel that he was pressing because it wasn't going well. The game was going away from him. And let's not forget the fact that he had no running game. The Jets ran for 2.6 yards a carry, 45 yards, and one of them was a 12-yard run by Ty Johnson in the fourth quarter. It would have been below 2 yards if that didn't happen. So in his first game on the road with the crowd, and he's never even been to an NFL game before, facing one of the better young pass rushes in football. I mean, the Panthers, say what you will, they might not have gaudy stats defensively, but they have a lot of speed, and they showed it. And that defense can probably carry them this year. I was really impressed with what they've done with that defense. But despite everything, Zack Wilson stood in there, stood tough, and led this team to a comeback and almost got a chance to win the game. And to me, this is what you're going to see a lot of this year. I think you want to see them in close games, and you want to see Zack Wilson play well, and you got that today. And I was really impressed with this Jet defense. I think with Zack Wilson, long story short, the first half was terrible, but you're also talking about a rookie play caller with LaFleur. You got a lot of young guys on this team. You have an offensive line that was horrendous. And it would have been just so easy just for the Jets to pack in the second half. But the fact that Wilson led them back and made this a competitive game, and he outplayed Darnold in the second half. I mean, you can't look at those stats too. Like I said, the drops and the pressure, people are going to look at the box score and go, oh, that's, wasn't that great. Look at what he did in the second half. And if you're a Jet fan, you have to feel happy about that pick. If I had to pick one of the two quarterbacks who I would have rather had out of the game, I would have taken Wilson. Because Darnold, whenever there was a little bit of duress, overthrowing guys, not looking comfortable, and look, outside of the one big play, which to me was more of a breakdown on the Jets side, the Panthers should have just blown the doors off, and you didn't see Darnold really just stomp on the Jets in the second half and really go for the jugular, and they let the Jets hang around, and good teams don't do that. But I also have to give the Jets defense a lot of credit because Robert Saleh was advertised as a defensive guy, but more importantly, a defensive guy that could adjust. The Jets lost Lawson, arguably their best defensive pass rusher. But man, even with Quinnen Williams, who really had no presence out there today, Fadu Kasi had a great game inside. John Franklin Myers had a great game getting after the quarterback. And they took a lot of heat with these young corners. But I'll tell you what, these young corners, they really impressed me today. Outside of the big play down the field to Robbie Anderson, I mean, this is one of the most explosive wide receiver cores in the NFL. I mean, when you're talking about Anderson and Moore, I mean, these guys can stretch the field. I mean, they can really get behind a defense. And I really saw the Jets staying stride for stride with these guys, and you could see the athleticism. And look, there's going to be rough days, especially against really experienced quarterbacks, really great top talent wide receivers. Not to take anything away from the Panthers, but I mean, I think they have a lot of great two wide receivers. I don't think one of them is a bona fide number one. But they have a lot of speed on that team, and I have to give this Jets defense credit, especially in the second half. They limited Christian McCaffrey, who was killing them the first half. And really, when they needed big stops and big plays, they were able to get off the field. Now, they didn't force any turnovers in this game, which you've liked to see. But this is a short unit. This is a young unit. And really, against Carolina, they hold this. This is a good offense. I mean, Christian McCaffrey could be an MVP candidate. They have three explosive wide receivers that can stretch the field and get behind anyone, and they held this team to 19 points. So I think that's great to see this defense. I think they're going to keep the Jets in games. I think you see a lot of nice building blocks for the future, and I think Saleh's got this unit in the right place. But we also have to talk about the negatives in this game. And the biggest negative is obviously the offensive line, which is Joe Douglas's baby. And you have to be critical of it. And is part of this that they didn't play the whole preseason together as a unit? I do think that's a big issue. Could it be communication with the young quarterback about the alignments? I think that could also be an issue. But it was interesting because Morgan Moses didn't get the start at right tackle. George Fant did. But then with the Machibechten injury, which we'll get into in a bit, they moved over. Moses went to right tackle. Fant went to left tackle. I still think it's a decent offensive line. I really love Elijah Vera Tucker, but that was a rough game. And if you are Joe Douglas, I know you love your draft picks and you don't want to give up a major one, but I am calling teams, and you're probably not going to get one, but if you could get a good young offensive lineman that you believe in, even if you have to give up a 3rd-round pick to get him, I would try to do that right now because this is the biggest thing for Zack Wilson. And I was impressed by this in the game, which was he didn't have happy feet despite getting hit and despite getting rushed. But you do not want this to be a situation like with the Bengals last year with Joe Burrow, where you saw this ascending star just in the middle of the season get cut off because of the poor offensive line play. That can't happen. Although I do have a theory, which I'll talk about a little bit that relates to Becton. But this offensive line, they have to be better because the Panthers are good. Don't get me wrong. The Panthers are a very good defense. But you're also in a division where you have to play the Bills twice a year, the Dolphins twice a year, and you start with the Patriots next week twice a year. You're not exactly playing not great defenses. So to me, it's not only just about the protection, it's about just getting the ball out of Zack Wilson's hands quicker. Look, I know he's got an explosive arm. You have a guy that you want to stretch the field with, but they didn't get the ball in the hands of Elijah Moore, who had a couple bad drops today. And I think he just feels so much pressure because he didn't play in the preseason. But give Corey Davis the ball in space. He was making plays. Give Elijah Moore the ball in space. Give Denzel Mims the ball in space. I mean, get the ball out of Wilson's hand until you feel confident that this offensive line can perform. And this offensive line, they were bad. And to me, the biggest shock wasn't necessarily the pass protection, because that's been a struggle all the training camp. But the one thing I was saying was the saving grace was, well, at least this team is doing well in the run game and opening up holes. So my thought was, okay, at least they'll be able to move the football, run the ball, be in more manageable situations. But once again, 2.6 yards today, and it's more closer to 2 after the Ty Johnson run, but it's bad. Because if you're going to be bad at pass protecting, at least be good at run blocking. So at least you're in manageable situations, and that takes pressure off the quarterback because the defense can't just send everyone on a 3rd and long. And to me, if you're Joe Douglas, you have some tough decisions to make. And I would be on the phone trying to find offensive line help. I know it'll be difficult to find, but if you can somehow swing something, I would definitely be looking into it, because this leads to the next thing, which is the Machibechten injury. Now, at the time I'm recording this, I don't know what the extent is, but being carted off, being that big, you assume it's either the season or a majority of the season. Which brings me to 2 things I'm interested in seeing. Number one is, how does this offensive line adjust? Because I do think in a weird way, it might be a little bit better with Fant and Moses, because they're more athletic tackles in terms of that they're quicker on their feet and they can seal off a little bit quicker. So this might be a better combination for running. And it did look like, I know it wasn't much of an improvement, but to me, it felt like when they made those adjustments that the pass protection was slightly, not much, but slightly better, and the run blocking was slightly better when these two were on the field at tackle positions. But this is the biggest thing I think the Jets have to come to a realization with, which is the following, which is Machibechten cannot be this team's starting left tackle next year. I believe the Jets are going to have a top 10 pick. If there's a left tackle in the draft, especially Evan Neal, the offensive tackle out of Alabama, I do think you're going to have to consider moving Becton to right tackle. Not only because I think it would be a better fit because he's a better run blocker, but When we're talking about franchise left tackles, it's about availability. And we're talking about a guy that missed a ton of snaps last year. Even despite Sam Darnold missing games, there was a stat that Sam Darnold played more snaps than Machibechten last year as a rookie. And we've all known about the weight issues that the Jets have been discussing. And now if he's out majority of the season, we're talking about a guy that's huge, but now has injury problems. And if this is a significant injury where he's out a long time, you cannot go into the 2022 season with Zack Wilson as your quarterback, with Machibechten scheduled in as a left tackle. Look, if he plays a full season in 2022 as the right tackle and proves he can stay healthy 16 games and looks like the better pass protector, then you can move him back. But you cannot go into the following season expecting Machibechten to not only play left tackle, but start 17 games, because what in the first 2 seasons would lead you to believe that? And on top of that, if you see guys get injured early in their NFL careers, I cannot think of a single player that all of a sudden didn't have injury issues. So I do think that that's going to be something that's going to have to be discussed long term. And is Machibechten a blow? It is a big blow because you've invested a first round pick in this guy this season. But the question is, can this offensive line live without him? And it'll be interesting to see if Elijah Vera Tucker plays well. I mean, he's shown he can play tackle in college. Maybe they might try him at left tackle later this year, but Fant's athletic. They brought in Morgan Moses. I mean, the Jets have some good offensive line pieces. They have to play better. I don't know if it's the communication. I don't know if it's the gelling, if it's getting used to this new scheme, but they got to do something because they have to protect Zack Wilson. That has to be the number one priority because, like I said, this kid has confidence and you love the moxie despite getting the tar beaten out of him today. And he still came back and he still put this team in a position to win. To me, it's not just the hits. It's him developing potential bad habits or worse, like I said, being the next Joe Burrow where you don't want to think about it. But if this line plays like this for 17 weeks, you have to consider it. It was terrible. You look back at last year and you're like, okay, this offensive line is going to be better this year. But you look at this first week, and you're like, man, that was hard to watch how bad they were. And it was more frustrating because you see the few times Wilson had time, he was making throws. So I don't know if they're going to have to just keep the tight ends in more, have a back to chip all the time, but they have to make some big changes. And I do think that this is a nice wake-up call for the Jets because the preseason, you're facing a lot of backups. You know, you're not facing the best competition. And now you see, okay, Wilson can make these plays in the game. That's not the issue. The issue is going to be the offensive line, and you either can coach that offensive line up or scheme around it where you get the ball out of Wilson's hands quicker. But even if it's not just the pass protection, it's got to be the run blocking because I saw this group in camp. They were run blocking real well, and they need to do a lot better. If they're not going to pass block, you might as well do something well. So the offensive line, that is the biggest worry going forward, and that's going to be the biggest thing to keep an eye on. But overall, I think that you've come out of this game feeling great. And I know it's going to be tough for Jet fans because you're going to hear it a lot in the media the next couple of days. Oh, Darnold beat the Jets. Did the Jets make a mistake moving on? And like I said, if you walked out of that game and said, which quarterback was more impressive to you? I know statistically Darnold looked better, but to me, it was Wilson. Wilson was under more duress, was sacked more, hit more, put in more terrible positions, lost his left tackle in the third quarter, and he still put the Jets in a position to win the football game. And he made plays in the second half. And he had probably one of the worst halves you will ever see a quarterback play. And he comes out and plays great in the second half. I mean, that's what you want to see because it's going to be a tough year. I mean, there's no question about it. There's going to be a lot of growing pains this season. But I loved what I saw from Wilson today. I loved what I saw from Robert Saleh and the defense today. But once again, the success of this team is clear. It's going to be the trenches. And we saw the defensive line. They had a good game today. There were times where they got gashed by Christian McCaffrey, but I can't think of a defense that's not going to get gashed by Christian McCaffrey. So, but the offensive line is going to be the big test because they have to keep him upright. They have to keep Zack Wilson protected. And I'm fascinated to see because I have a feeling that this will be a big discussion point at the end of the season, especially if Machibechten misses time, that I have a feeling in some weird way that the offensive line might be better with this combination in terms of with this scheme and how you need athletic offensive linemen now with Fant at left tackle and Moses at right tackle. I'm interested to see because it wasn't significantly better, but to me in the few series that we saw that combination, it looked better. Moses sealed off the big 12-yard run. So I'll be interested to see. Who knows? Maybe in a weird way, this might be a better offensive line combination. But like I said, too, I think the Jets have a hard decision to make. I think if Joe Douglas is smart, he's on the phone looking for offensive line help. But like I said, I think the big takeaway is if Machibechten misses significant time, you cannot pencil him in to be this left tackle in 2022. Maybe your right tackle, but you need your left tackle to protect your quarterback's blind side for the entire season. And it was hot potato last year with Bechten's health, and already one game into this season, it's not looking good. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our reaction to every single Jets game. We will be back next week to talk about the Jets-Patriots game, the home opener for the New York Jets at MetLife Stadium. And of course, we will be giving you Jet content throughout the season, regularly throughout the week. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. And is there anything you'd like to talk about with the Jets? Do you want me to talk more potential draft down the road? I just released a video about the NFL draft, quarterback prospects. I know it doesn't really apply to the Jets, but if there's certain Jet content or history content that you want me to talk about the Jets, leave a comment below and I'll look into making that down the road. But until next time and until week 2, I'm Nolan Rich, and this is Rich Sports Talk.